Welcome back to another edition of the Talking National League podcast. Episode 15 it is tonight. It's in fact a bonus episode due to obviously no games being on yesterday due to understandable reasons. I'm pleased to be joined by Colin Sisson tonight to preview game week 8. We've also got other guests coming on during the show, even a Q&A in fact with Jordan Hume, Altrincham FC striker and captain. We've also got Dan Rowe, who's works within Andy's Man Club. He's a Wrexham supporter. We're going to be speaking to him about World Suicide Day, which obviously happened yesterday, and just looking at some of the factors within sport of how it can sort of benefit you too. But first, before we do talk about that, Colin, how are you? Have you been okay this weekend with no football being on?
I've struggled, I'll be honest with you. Talking about kind of mental health and those sort of things, I think there's an awful lot of people that rely on football to provide that kind of structure, around your life, and I definitely missed it. So looking forward to getting back, to the games, and credit for the National League to come out kind of strong and bold about the games going forward. I know there's an awful lot of debate on social media about whether it was the right decision or not. Not wanting to get into that, but like I say, it's good that they've given that kind of reassuring gesture that we're going to be moving forward with it. And I think, one of the things I'm looking forward to seeing is the impact of that kind of restart, of that unexpected kind of, little bit of time off, because there's some clubs that may have used that time to kind of, players to recover from knocks, maybe kind of reconsider a few things that maybe, the weekend's games might have happened too quick. Whereas there's also some clubs, Notts County included, my side, who are in good form. And you just wonder whether, is this interruption kind of interrupted that flow a little bit, and can we carry that form on?
Yeah, exactly. And I agree with you on that. I know people have different opinions on the games being postponed. Most football fans, in fact, probably obviously wanted games to go ahead this weekend. And to be honest, I agree with them. And I think most people will. But obviously, it's quite hard to, argue with that after, such a significant death in England, isn't it? What obviously happened on Friday evening. What were your thoughts then on games being postponed?
Like I said, I think I could probably understand the professional game. I think there was a desire to avoid, the occasional flashpoint, and I think we've all been to games before where there's been, I don't know, minutes silences or minutes applause that have been interrupted by a very, very small minority in a lot of cases. And I think the authorities were probably concerned by that. I think the biggest loss really was grassroots football. I thought that could have probably still gone ahead, really, particularly because I think, the younger generation have certainly suffered with COVID and lockdowns and those sort of things. And obviously, we're all delighted to get back to allowing grassroots and youth football to play. So I think that was a little bit of a loss. But then also, like you say, the flip side of that coin is, there's an important message there as well, isn't it? That there's also big things in society, bigger than football, perhaps. Although, like I say, not necessarily for me, but I'm like I say, in terms of society, I think there were some important messages as well. But I'm sure we're all delighted to just get back to some sense of normality.
Yeah, I just think for me, I just don't really understand how it benefited anybody cancelling the games. And, obviously we're going to speak a bit more in depth about mental health when Dan does join us later on in the show. But, there's a lot of people, and I've seen it online, have actually paid for transport in advance. My mate is a Bolton fan, was going to Cheltenham and didn't usually do like long distance away days or that. And obviously, he's obviously gone, paid for coach travel with his dad, gone down, tickets in advance, and he's paid a lot of money for it just to be cancelled like that at such short notice as well, which I just didn't really see the point. I understand there's certain elements and certain point of views on it when you think about minute silence as being interrupted, and yes, potentially using a club as an example, maybe Wrexham because they're Welsh. Nothing against Wrexham, but obviously they'll have different, their fans will have different opinions. If they, let's say, interrupted a minute silence, it'd have a very negative effect on them as a club. But then again, on the other flip side, games going ahead this Tuesday, and there's going to be minute silences as planned. I think there's just a lot of different, point of views on it. And yeah, I don't think we need to talk much more about that. But we've had a few people coming in the chat. Just remember, if you are on Twitter or YouTube, please feel free to get involved in the live chat. Give us some topics to talk about potentially. Give your thoughts on the topics that we're currently talking about. But yeah, this is it so far. So Notts County fan, I believe, said up the Notts. Ali has said force working. Anthony, I believe he might be a Bromley fan, has said evening, lads. Evening to you too. And then someone else, you might have a bit more knowledge on this, Viva Macaulay Langstaff. How's he been then this at the start of this season? I know there was a poll on Twitter saying who's the better striker. Dorking it was actually, apologies for that. But there was actually a poll on Twitter suggesting who was the better striker, Quigley or Langstaff. And I sort of laughed at that and thought, well, that's a bit pointless, isn't it? What were your take on that if you saw it?
Do you know what? I'm going to get splinters on the fence that I'm going to sit on there, even though I'm obviously a diehard Notts fan. I think a lot of these polls that you see on social media, I remember one talking about kind of world-class strikers and ended up comparing 4 strikers who played very different roles. You know what I mean? I think Henry was one of them that they mentioned on there, and Shevchenko and Drogba as well. You know, these are strikers who played very different roles in very different styles, and you know, were successful in very different teams. So going back to Langstaff, though, like I say, we obviously had a reliable goal scorer in Kyle Wootton last season, over the last couple of seasons, you know, and at the same time, you know, again, the way he played and the way he had to play was very different to the way that Langstaff plays. And, you know, I have some sympathy for Wootton because, like I say, he caught a lot of flack a little bit from Notts fans because he had to play that back to goal role as that kind of target man. It wasn't as, you know, the ball over the top or finding those gaps and letting him run onto, although obviously he had that in his game when needed. But, you know, it's incredibly exciting to see a player in form, you know, and scoring goals in the way that he's doing, you know, and like I say, Notts attacking a very different way to how we have done previously. And it's so good, I think, to see it hit the ground running so soon. I think you always worry when you recruit a striker who's got a bit of pedigree, you know, you wait for those goals to go in and you reassure, but really they need to hit the ground running. And I think strikers at Notts, historically, thinking about my time, you know, supporting the club, they haven't always hit the ground running. So it's absolutely fantastic to see him do that, and long may it continue. Yeah,
I always used to think, and you may disagree with me here, that Wootton was quite limited as a player. You know, he'd have certain aspects that he were good at, I think, in the air, you know, a natural finisher, but you know, Langstaff's got everything to his game. He's so versatile for a forward. You know, he's fast, he's quick, he can shoot, he can score a header. He's always in the right areas. He's very intelligent. You know, I've witnessed that, and I think you've also got other players surrounding that. If he wasn't scoring, like Cedric Scott, Rodriguez, who could also chip in on goals, where last season it sort of felt like it was Wootton or nobody, maybe Rodriguez when he was on form. I don't know. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's important to remember as well. I think Wootton did an awful lot defensively. You know, the amount of times that he was winning balls on our own 18-yard box, you know, and then obviously we're expecting to motor on up there. And, you know, I certainly wouldn't have it in my locker to then have a finish at the end of that as well. But you're right, you know, we've attacked in a different way, in a different style, and it's relied on different qualities. And it's fantastic to see sort of Langstaff do that. And obviously Cedric Scott as well, who obviously joined him, you know, and we sort of rekindled that strike partnership from Gateshead. He's starting to get into the goals now. And again, I think going back to the restart, it would have been nice to see them because they just started to click into gear. And it'd be interesting to see whether the time away has sort of dulled that a little bit, and they need a little bit more time together to really sort of get that going at Meadow Lane. So yeah, it's fantastic though to see a striker coming into that in form, in confidence, and I think the rest of the National League are also sort of sitting back and taking notice now.
Yeah, you know, I fear him as a forward. Obviously, there were the news on like Kabongo Tishamango and how deadly he can be as a forward. That obviously broke through. So, you know, Chesterfield have got a prolific goal scorer there. And it always seems to me that if a side's got a prolific goal scorer and a tight defence, you usually find yourself at the top half of the table. You know, we had it last season, Billy Waters, where this season there hasn't really been particularly anyone that's been, obviously it's still early, but being prolific for us like Billy Waters was. And that sort of seems to be our downfall because we play in games, and even Notts at home, for an example, that first goal could have gone either way. It was very tight. But Notts took the chances. I think they had about 4 shots. They probably had more, but 4. It felt like they had 4 shots and they scored. They took every single one, and that's what a good side can do. It doesn't matter how they play. If they can, you know, get the result and score goals, you're going to be in a good position. And I think that's how a prime example of not just getting the job done at Halifax, although it does sound rather like disappointing when you say, well, getting the job done, we've just, battered you 4-1. But it did feel like at the time that Notch basically just did a job on us. But yeah, someone else has come in and said, it's a good topic to talk about this. Thoughts on the loss of Rusherford? Does who's that? Concord away. I can't even read that. Concord away, Beacon.
It's the Rutherford injury, isn't it? Dorking.
Yeah.
Rutherford. I mean, it's funny you mentioned Schmanga. You know what I mean? It's another loss to the league, isn't it? Obviously when I think as a club, there is that side of every supporter that wants your side to be as stronger than everybody else. And thinking back to the Schmanga injury with Chesterfield is obviously that blunted their threat. But at the same time, as a fan, and particularly with strikers as well, do you know what I mean, who carry an awful lot of kind of prestige, and so you just don't want to see the injuries. You don't want to see the bad injuries, the season-ending injuries. And so obviously he's got my sympathies really, because he was hitting form. He was already somebody that lots of people were aware of. You were hoping he was going to go on that kind of upward trajectory. Everything seemed to be going well, and it's devastating to see an injury like that, because the National League's so strong anyway, isn't it? To have these sort of players and to lose any of them is disappointing.
Yeah, I do actually feel for Mark now. Obviously, I had him on the podcast it was streamed on Thursday evening. So if there are any fans, not now, but after this, go check that interview out if you haven't seen it already. But yeah, I remember him saying they've been so unfortunate with injuries at this moment in time. And he said, we'll be that complete team in the new year when we head into the second round of fixtures. What their problem really has been is conceding goals. Going forward, they've been good, but then I can't see them not conceding the same amount of goals that they're doing at the moment. But they always relied on potentially outscoring sides like they have done in the past, and losing such a prolific goal scorer, because he's proven it at this level in the past. That could be the difference between Dorking Wanderers surviving this season and them going down. So if you haven't, someone else has come in. Who's this? Colin, would you mind reading this out? It's just I haven't got my glasses on. I do apologise.
Yeah, no worries, mate. No worries. So if Woking were able to finish mid-table, would it be a disappointing season for them based on how they've strengthened?
What are your thoughts on that then?
Well, I mean, like I say, I think, yeah, possibly so. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think it takes some time, doesn't it? We talked about, churn and turning over a squad and stuff and bringing sort of new recruits in. And I think sometimes as a fan, you can look at that and go, okay, well, where's the results then? How's it going to get better and where's it going to get better? And I think, we're still very early on into the season. And I think it does take some time for squads to gel and sort of get together. And so I'm hoping, and I imagine that Woking will be a sort of stronger force going forward, in terms of once that familiarity stage goes over. And I think, again, without one to sound like a broken record, it goes back to this unfortunate kind of disruption of the season. I know it's only a short one, and I know we're back to it very soon. But again, I'm sure there's plenty of managers and coaches thinking about, the units that they've been trying to sort of blend together and getting them really to work on those kind of finer, minute details that can sometimes be the difference between a win and a loss. And that's been disrupted slightly. But no, going back to Woking, like I say, I think obviously they're one of the sides that's tried to recruit and tried to strengthen. And I think it just takes a little bit of time for that to come to fruition.
Yeah, I actually do think it would be disappointing if Woking finished mid-table. But then again, you've got to think, no matter how many quality Football League players they've brought into the squad, they've had two significant losses. And I don't care what you say, Max Kretschmark was probably one of the top players in the league last season. And then you also had Ini Effingham, who, yes, I've been told, only really started scoring in the second half of the season, but it's still a big loss for them, although they've, sort of strengthened with Padraig Amond. How's he done so far, Colin, Padraig Amond, this season for Woking?
Yeah, I mean, like I say, one of those sort of pieces of recruitment that sort of stood out a little bit, because obviously caliber, good caliber of a player. And I think, again, the conversations that we're having already is that the significance of the National League is strikers, and the strength of your strikers can really define your season. But experienced as well. And like I say, thinking about, Woking and going forward, that's the sort of player that you need in the dressing room to reassure people when it's perhaps not going as well, that they rely on that experience and go, do you know what, I've been here before, this will happen, we'll do this, we'll achieve this, and being able to kind of settle those nerves. And I do think, like I say, that we'll see an even stronger finish from Woking going forward.
Yeah, the only thing and I actually did mention this when I was doing my predictions, and everyone was saying, "Oh, Amond, what a signing! That's such a marquee signing for Woking." And I looked at it and I thought, yes, but he's getting on. I believe, I think 30. He's in his 30s now, isn't he? Amond, he's getting on. He still hasn't scored, and I sort of expected this from him because of his age, and I think there were so much high expectations for him. So, yeah, that seems to be a problem for Woking at this moment in time. But yeah, going back to the original point, I do think it would be disappointing, and they would have underperformed if they didn't manage to even sort of flirt with those playoff spots. But yeah, for anyone that is watching and you haven't already, please remember to drop us a like and subscribe. That would be much appreciated. And yep, so keep sending your questions in about anything to do with the National League at this moment in time. Obviously, as I've mentioned, we are later going to be joined by Dan Rowe, who's a Wrexham supporter, talking about mental health. And then we're later going to have a Q&A with Jordan Hume, Altrincham FC captain and striker. So Chesterfield lead the way at this moment in time. Wrexham not far behind them. And then it goes to Notts. Seems to, I wouldn't say a gap yet, but it seems to be sort of going into sort of taking its place, doesn't it, the National League at this moment? How everyone was expecting at the start of the season, despite potentially Wealdstone and Barnet, being up there, which nobody particularly expected. But Chesterfield, Wrexham and Notts, the three title favourites are all leading the way.
Yeah, they are. And that's the strange thing about the National League really this season is that, thinking back to the previous seasons that Notts have been in with it, that it has been quite unpredictable, you know what I mean? And it has changed shape an awful lot. And so it's surprising, I think, to see this come to fruition so quickly. I don't think anyone's shocked that those three sides that we've mentioned are up there. But you're right, to have it happen so early and for it to be fairly consistent as well in terms of performances. And you have to say, the clubs that are up there have all had to overcome certain things. Do you know what I mean? As well, I know there's a few little off-field stuff for Chesterfield to deal with at the moment. And they had a back end of last season that was disrupted as well. Wrexham have had an awful lot of recruitment to kind of deal with, and I thought it's very interesting that the manager's feedback at the last result seemed to be more about, or it showed that he was very much aware of that need to blend players in and the organisational stuff. So even though they're going away and scoring goals now, he's obviously still very concerned, or not concerned, but obviously very sensitive to the fact that they're still trying to blend that side together in the new signings. And you'd say that with Notts as well. You know what I mean? We've got a new manager. We've got new players who thankfully are hitting the ground running. And I think that's credit to the players themselves and credit to the management staff that's got them playing a particular way. So it's a fascinating one. At the same time, though, this wouldn't be the National League if we're not sat here in a few weeks' time and looking at a completely different picture as well.
Yeah, more like Parkinson sacked, new manager, Solihull Moors might be top of the league. Halifax might have climbed back up the table and be in the playoffs. Probably not the way we've been playing, but yeah, we have improved actually. Another point, 4 points in the last 2 games, which were both away. May I add, obviously Maidenhead away. It's a bit of a bogey side from our perspective. We never seem to do well there. I don't think many sides, I mean like your established sides like your Chesterfields and your Wrexhams and your Notts ever seem to really do well at somewhere like Maidenhead. But yeah, to get a point there, it's an improvement from the previous season. We got defeated there and obviously beaten Scunthorpe away. I think from our perspective now, we have to win our next couple of home games that are coming up. Obviously, it was meant to be Dorking at home, and then Gator said it would have been a perfect. Mark actually said to me it would have been a perfect time to play Dorking, especially with this the Rusherford being injured and also all the other injuries surrounding Dorking, and they're quite out of form at this moment in time. Would have been a good time to play them because we did sort of need that game where I wouldn't say a free win because it's never a free win in this league, no matter who you play, but you'd be expecting us to win just based off how many goals they've conceded. So I think for me, it'd be a good opportunity to, get a few goals in that game as well grow our confidence, and then heading into Gateshead, which was quite an awkward one. We never seem to have a good record against Gateshead when they've been in the National League in the past. We could have obviously gone on to have a bit of confidence going into that, where now we've had a big break after a fairly decent past 2 weeks. Going into Gateshead, there's a lot of pressure now to win. I don't know what your thoughts is on that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, I noticed obviously the results away from home, and I think sometimes I saw it from the outside looking in that's a side that has been under a little bit of pressure, know that they've not been performing and probably enjoyed, playing away from home a little bit. Is that how you see it? I mean, and obviously there must be the excitement, finally of going to a home game and feeling like you've got a good chance.
Yeah, I know the team, I think the fans are starting to potentially get a bit more behind the team now, which is probably better because, it's never good no matter what when a team's getting booed and fans aren't happy with the performances and, complaining at certain players. You'll know that, Colin. With Notts County, you did sort of feel that sort of toxic atmosphere against Notts County, but then to go to somewhere like Scunthorpe, we didn't take too many, but I know we made a decent amount of noise considering, the position that we was in, and getting 3 points there to then go and get a point away at Maidenhead. I'm thinking now it'd be a lot more positive, that stand, heading into Gateshead, and we can probably build off that. At the start of the season, I predicted us just outside of the playoffs. I'd probably put us slightly lower than that at this moment in time. A lot could change, but I just think we're just lacking a prolific goal scorer, and I just can't see one player in that team that's going to be getting, 15 goals a season. I just can't see it. We are, in fact, joined by Dan now. Dan, I'm going to bring you in. We're going to be talking a lot on mental health. Obviously, it was Men's Suicide Day yesterday. Dan, firstly, how are you?
I'm very good, Luke. Thank you very much for the invite. It's much appreciated.
No, it's great. It's great to have you on to talk about mental health and stuff. Firstly, how did you get involved with everything to do with mental health and football?
Yeah, so I first got involved with Andy's Man Club, who are a men's mental health and suicide prevention charity 4.5 years ago, and I suppose like a lot of guys, I just needed somewhere to go. At that stage, my life wasn't in a particularly good place, so walking through the door, we kind of started that whole chain reaction of events, really. So that's how I got involved. I'm a massive football fan. I'm a big Wrexham fan, season ticket holder at Wrexham, but heavily involved with Altrincham Football Club as well.
Yeah, it's great to hear that. Colin, have you got anything to add?
Yeah, no, like I said, I think it's a massively important topic. I mean, I started sort of blogging first, writing, and then obviously doing things like this in terms of podcasts. And I think some of that was down to kind of mental health and stuff. I had a good chance at playing football as a youngster and didn't manage that. And that was difficult to take in the first day because you've got all these kind of hopes and expectations, either for yourself and from the people around you as well, who kind of want you to make it. And so I found it very difficult to lose that and to find a way back into the game that we all love. And it really is a love and an obsession, isn't it? And so I was lucky enough to have opportunities with Gerrit Ford, which is Notts County fanzine, coming at a time of typical for Notts, really, of upheaval and stressful situations off the field and finances and all that sort of stuff. So it was a great opportunity to just kind of compose your thought, really, and also getting the positive feedback from your fellow fans as well, which is a fantastic thing, and again convinces you to go forward. So I think it's a really important topic, and can really sort of galvanise football fans, certainly.
Yeah, I think it's great that it's sort of getting improved and people are being a lot more aware of mental health because it's so common now. I think it's always been common, but it's so much awareness surrounding it now, and things like Andy's Man Club and stuff really do support that. Like for me, when I first started, it was obviously COVID when I first started everything, and I was just getting bored and I needed something to do. So I think you could put down that to mental health, and you get times like during the week. For me, I'm at school and I'm always like, I don't know what I'd do without football at the end of the week, something to, look forward to. And I think it's great to just see there's a lot more awareness surrounding it now. But yeah, Dan, could you just talk us through some of the initiatives that have been going on at this moment in time?
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned, so yesterday was World Suicide Prevention Day. Just to put, I suppose, that into context. Suicide's the biggest killer in the UK of men under the age of 50. 12 men die by suicide each day, so that's one man every 2 hours. So it plays a huge part in society rather than not just kind of football related. But if we look at the role that football clubs play within our communities, the where we meet our friends, where a lot of people where we meet our families. You just mentioned there, Luke, the thought of maybe not having a football game at the end of the week is not one that we all kind of relish or kind of thing. We all kind of look forward to that experience. I know I've got a 6.5-year-old lad who I take to the football with me, and it's one of the highlights for me of my week. So it's really important. So we're really privileged, certainly within Andy's Man Club, that 11 clubs within the National League have Andy's Man Clubs within their town, and 5 of which they're actually based at the football club. So within the National League, we've got Altrincham, Eastleigh, Halifax, Oldham, and Southend that all have Andy's Man Clubs physically based.
I didn't even know that about Halifax.
Yeah, so Halifax is where Andy's Man Club started, Luke. And so that was sort of 6.5 years ago now. So it originates out of Halifax, and has grown from there. If we look even at the kind of step below as well, you've got Chelmsford, Chorley, Tadcaster, Scarborough. The kind of, because the role that the football clubs play within the community are huge. So one of the things that I approached Altrincham about was, can I get access to the first team players? And they've been brilliant since we launched a club in Altrincham back at February last year. And so I delivered a talk about Andy's Man Club to the players, because I think it's really important that we forget that players are young guys, aren't they? They're young men. They might be living the dream in terms of that, but they've still got the same challenges. Sadly, we saw the tragic loss of Lee Collins not that long ago, the Yeovil captain, to suicide. So it just shows that footballers really aren't exempt from that. So we got to spend the morning with them. We did some filming with them, and they very kindly, every season, they give one of their home games to us as a charity partner, where we can raise awareness. Now that game was scheduled for yesterday. For obvious reasons, that's obviously we're going to have to look at rearranging that. But I suppose in all of our communities, there's nowhere else, probably not aside, where there's anywhere else where there's a group of guys that get together in the same numbers than within our football clubs. And you guys together with Forest, I suppose, Colin, we'll take that to the next level, don't you, with the attendances that both clubs get?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's having avenues for fans of, we'll call each other rival clubs in terms of the city, sadly not in terms of league position, but having those spaces where you can have that friendly chat and conversation and being able to to talk about footballers, which is a great leveler, isn't it, with everybody, is something that I think every town and every city needs, to be able to kind of bridge those gaps and to be able to kind of connect with people is so vitally important. So, I just want to say, I think it's fantastic work that we're hearing about, certainly.
And I think to add to that and to put my Andy's Man Club hat to one side was during COVID times, with my own football club at Wrexham, and this was before our new owners took over, and we were under the trust support. Myself and the head of community for Wrexham Supporters Trust set up a men's mental health group for the football club. Now that's an online group rather than a physical group called Dragon Chat, which has now been running for best part of 2 years. And to give you an idea of the impact that has, is at least 5 of the members that came to Dragon Chat are now season ticket holders at Wrexham. Now all these 5 guys have been Wrexham fans for the whole lives. And for a variety of reasons, whether that be just anxiety, maybe not knowing somebody that goes to the game, that they've all become season ticket holders. They all sit together. They travel to away games together. There's a little we always laugh. There's a bit of a Dragon Chat car now that travels from Wrexham to every away game now, and the power of that is massive. Like the change of somebody being a fan and maybe sitting at home watching the results coming in, thinking, I'd just love to have someone to go to the football with. to now through initiative that was raised by the football club and run by volunteers is hugely powerful, and it just goes to show the importance of that football does play.
Yeah, like you've mentioned, how people can get friends through this sort of chats, and it happens at a variety at clubs now, including like Wrexham with Dragon Chat, and it sort of benefits the club, doesn't it, as well as the supporters, and that's something that I think a lot more clubs in the National League who haven't got involved with Andy's Man Club and other mental health clubs and stuff should definitely get involved with that.
It's a no-brainer to me, because like I said, that football clubs that invest in the community are football clubs that are going to have longevity and are going to grow, because it's about, in the same way from an Andy's Man Club point of view, we spend a lot of time and effort thinking about how can we make it easier for guys to walk through the door and talk about stuff that might be tough for them to talk about. Football clubs have to surely spend a lot of time working out, how do we get people through the door? Like, there's obviously a whole conversation about streaming at the moment and the worry about the drop in attendances. Well, to be honest, to throw that at clubs, how are you going to make it more enticing for people to get? How are you going to make it easier for people to access that?
Yeah, Colin, have you got to add?
Well, I was just wondering, sort of, anybody who's listening to this. I mean, obviously, I'm fascinated, and I'm very conscious, obviously, that Notts aren't a club that you've mentioned. So, how would you go about, starting a club? Where could we go, or how, thinking about those kind of very first steps in trying to establish something?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and one that I'm very, very glad that you've asked, Colin, because Notts is very much on our radar. To get a club. So Andy's Man Club grows really organically. So as for myself, I started off walking through the door. Every single facilitator or everyone that started a club within Andy's Man Club starts off by walking through the door. So we grow organically. That's why there's still probably large parts of the country that we don't cover, because that's the way that we do. And it's about matching that. So my role, I work for Andy's Man Club now, and one of my roles is to grow that out. So we quite often, we get a lot of people that will hear about us and want to get involved. So they'll email info@andysmanclub.co.uk to say that they'd like to get involved. We also get a lot of venues that email in, but Notts is absolutely on our radar, because we've got a couple in Sheffield. We're trying to get us south as quickly as possible, but it has to be sustainable as well. So if someone is listening, whether that be from a venue, whether that be you're a fan and you'd like to get involved, the biggest thing I can say is email in info@andysmanclub.co.uk. Let us know that you're interested in getting involved, and then from there you'd be surprised that how many people do that, and then we can put people together, if you like.
Yeah, what do the group sessions like include then when you actually go to these groups? What do you talk about and stuff?
Yeah, great question. So we're what's classed as a peer support group. So what that means is there's no one in the room acting on a professional basis. So you'll never get told what to do, what you should or you shouldn't be doing. And it's with being peer support group, you're going to meet a group of guys that effectively are going through similar stuff to what you're going through. The one thing that mental health or poor mental health does for a lot of guys is it isolates them. You have that feeling that you're the only person going through whatever it is that you're going through. Actually, you go and meet a group of strangers and you realize we're all going through it together. We're all going through that thing. So you'll meet a community. So just like you go and meet a group of mates in a setting, whatever that setting is, that's what you're going to find in Andy's Man Club. But they're just going to start off as strangers, and then like some of my best friends now I've made through Andy's Man Club, and it's a really structured session, but gives everyone the opportunity to speak, to open up. There's no obligation to do that, but we do obviously encourage that. But there's a lot of positivity around. There's a lot of laughter around. I'm yet to be in an Andy's Man Club that hasn't involved laughter. And I think that's really, really important, because we want people to improve their lives by looking for more positivity within there, because that's really difficult for someone that's struggling. But again, to walk through the door, like, you don't even need a mental health issue. I remember when we opened Altrincham, it was during lockdown, and the guy who now runs Altrincham, since I've moved into my role within the charity, one of the main reasons he came down was because he was a season ticket holder at Alti, he'd not been to the ground because it had been COVID. He wanted to see, in his words, he wanted to watch the grass grow for a couple of hours.
Fair play to him then. But yeah, just finally then, is there anything new coming up in the future that yourself and Andy's Man Club are wanting to introduce?
Yeah, I mean, there's always stuff going on with Andy's Man Club. I suppose it's one of the benefits of doing that. We've recently announced there's another 5 clubs coming on board, which is outstanding. That'll take us to 111 groups across the UK. That continues to kind of grow. I suppose from a football aspect, the role, like I said, the role that football clubs play in the community is huge. I mentioned that we've got 5 groups just purely in the National League. If you take that, like Preston, Burnley, Blackburn, these are all groups that are based at the football club. Yeah. Newcastle United, our Newcastle group, is at the football club. So if you are a National League team that hasn't got an Andy's Man Club within your area, then reach out to us, because we'll be able to do that. And the power that you'll see from it and the benefit that you'll see from a club will be huge. And it's something that's a good thing to do, but also something that you can shout about and then hopefully benefit. So I'd keep an eye on all of our social medias. There's loads of stuff always going on. We're really grateful and we're really lucky to be in that position.
Yeah, I'll drop a link in the description after the live video as well for anyone that does want to get involved. I think that does also surprise me is a lot of people who suffer from mental health, you do expect it, especially men. I know it's something that's always talked about is, they do like to keep themselves to themselves. They don't really express, their feelings at moments. So there's a lot of people out there that you don't really expect, like you've mentioned, they could be footballers, and you're shocked to hear that they're suffering from mental health or any other illness to do with mental health itself. Colin, have you finally got anything to add?
No, like I say, I mean, I just want to thank you for coming on, really, and just want to implore anybody listening who's even mildly interested in starting something like this or feels the urge to take part in a group like this to reach out and to follow the advice that we've just heard, really, because it sounds absolutely fantastic. And I know certainly that there's a few people that I'll try and reach out to in terms of it, not to try and get something going, because I can only really see the benefits of such a group.
Mm-hmm. One final thing then, Dan, what's your score prediction for Wrexham versus Dagenham?
Oh, well, at home we're on fire. Dagenham seem to be imploding. So the true Wrexham fan in me says it's going to be 1-0 to Dagenham. But I suspect if we get an early goal, we'll run out fairly comfortable winners of 2 or 3-0. But it's the National League. Like, who knows? This is it. But sorry, to jump in there. What are you guys? I'm sure you've already talked about it, but what have you made to the start of the season? Like,
from Wrexham, just based off Wrexham.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and in general.
Colin, I'll ask you to speak first then.
Obviously seeing Wrexham as a kind of divisional rival, do you know what I mean? And just sort of, they're a fascinating team to even just get your head around, really, in terms of the ownership and those sort of things. And obviously, the recruitment power that they've got. And I was fascinated to see how the recruitment seems to have worked quite well. Like I say, we talked just before you joined us about kind of Parkinson's feedback on the last game. He seemed to be more determined to emphasize that the team's blending and fitting together and understanding each other, rather than obviously some of the really impressive results that you've been getting, really. And I think that was always going to be the barometer for me. I sort of predicted when I was on Luke's show, before the season started, that Wrexham might have a bit of a bumpy start, maybe even, a change of manager. And then I thought you'd absolutely fly from there once these new signings all kind of clicked in. But, from someone who's going down to the games and stuff, do you feel that it's happening and it's quite fluid now? Is it clicking into gear?
We have spells of that. I don't think anyone will be surprised by, like you just mentioned there, about things taking a little bit of time, and there's just huge pressure at the racecourse. Like, last year was an interesting season. There's no grace period for Parkinson or the team now, and you kind of saw that the first game of the season against Eastleigh was a horrible atmosphere, and Eastleigh played what I imagine most teams will likely do when they come to the racecourse, bar a couple. And Maidstone came and tried to play football and got battered, for want of a better term, whereas Eastleigh made it horrible and had 2 players booked in the first half for time wasting. And we really struggled from that. But it's interesting. There's obviously a huge amount of talk about the amount of money Wrexham invest and have spent and stuff like that. Our player of the season so far this season, head and shoulders, is an academy graduate, and that's Max Cleworth. I don't really hear other people talking about, but Max, from my point of view, Max, out of the whole Wrexham squad now, will play at the highest level than any other player that plays for Wrexham that's in that squad. He is outstanding, and to say that
I've heard a lot about him. He's done well, hasn't he, Max Cleworth? Just from what I've heard about him and just highlights I've seen. To say he's an academy graduate as well. I think another one's Jordan Davis. I don't know how he started this season yet, but back end of last season and the whole of last season, in fact, he was quality as well. Aaron Hayden's also had a good start, hasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. Max Cleworth is literally only just turned 20.
Yeah,
he is a scary, scary prospect. He's got, and I think there's a lot of Wrexham fans that agree, and we talk a lot about he'll get better the higher the division he goes. His game is not necessarily he's the target, if you like. So he's the big striker is always going to pull off onto Max. That's the target. That's what we see constantly, and he handles that really well. But he's equally as comfortable with the ball at both feet, so it's good. Jordan Davis has had a decent start without. I mean, goals get you the headlines, don't you? But I think I read he's got 5 assists and a goal, and hasn't, from our point of view, probably feel like he's set the world on fire. I think the biggest question for Wrexham fans is, how do we get Jordan Davis and Elliot Lee in the same team?
Yeah, I was asking that at the start of the season as well when I were doing me you signed Elliot Lee, but I was a bit like, why? I was thinking that. I was thinking, yes, he's a big name, he's going to impact the team, but I thought, you've got Jordan Davis there who's, had an unbelievable previous season. And I sort of felt, how's he going to feel, knowing that another attacking midfielder's coming in who, just based off, their history as a player, know that Elliot Lee's most likely to start, don't you, based off, in your decided 11. Dan, I do really appreciate you coming on tonight to talk about mental health and a bit on Wrexham. We'll have you on again at the back end of the season. I'm sure about that. To talk, have a bit of an update on Wrexham and the latest news with Andy's Man Club. Dan, I do really appreciate you coming on.
Luke, you're doing great stuff.
Cheers.
So I really appreciate you, and nice to meet and speak to you, Colin, as well.
And you, mate.
Cheers, Dan, for coming on.
Thanks a lot.
Oh, yeah, it was great to speak to Dan about the latest news with mental health, wasn't it, Colin?
Absolutely, yeah. It's such an important topic, and I think, really good timing as well with, like I say, the loss of the games at the weekend. And again, it's something that we've all got to keep talking about, haven't we? Because the danger of not talking about it is the reason why the statistics are so shockingly high. So yeah, it's an absolutely fantastic listen to, and I know certainly that I'll be passing that on and to people at Notts in the hope of establishing a similar club.
I think the saying is you learn something new every day. I didn't even know Andy's Man Club started in Halifax. Didn't even know Halifax had anything to do with it. So yeah, that was good to point out. Just for anyone that is watching that wants to, get involved, just learn a bit more about Andy's Man Club yourself, just to get a bit of information on it. I will leave a link in the description after the live video. I'll also put a link out on Twitter too. So if you would retweet that, if you're watching on Twitter, that would be much appreciated. We've got a few questions that have come in. We will answer them slightly later in the show, but it's the interview I think you've all been waiting for, especially Altrincham fans. I caught up with Jordan Hume, Altrincham FC captain and current striker, fan favourite as well, earlier on in the week. This is my Q&A with him. Just before we do go, I don't know what the internet's going to be like with this, lagging-wise, but you'll always hear it clearly. So, yeah, just try to forget that. So, yeah, cheers, Colin. I'll bring this on.
It's Jordan Hume, and I'm a striker for Altrincham FC. Do you know, I didn't really get into it, to be honest. I was thrown into it. So, my dad played all his career, and then I think from a young age, do you know what? I was better as a kid than I am now. I was very good as a kid. I think everyone wanted me at one point. City, United, Everton. And yeah, I just loved it. So I just spent every day playing, and it's took me to where I am now. Honestly, it's a great club. I can't. It's tough to describe until you come in. Like, as soon as I came in, it took me 2-3 weeks to realise what the club was about and how it runs. And then as soon as I did, and I just fell in love with the place, and probably shouldn't have left, but I did. And yeah, I'm just glad to be back now. One, to be fair, I used to be a bit of an Arsenal fan, so I had Ian Wright's shirt and then Thierry Henry's shirt.
Yeah. Patrick Vieira.
Yeah, Vieira, they had a good team, and then I joined Bolton, and then it was when they had a great team as well, so it's like a Koch. I used to like Ricardo Vazte as well for some reason. I don't know if you remember him, but yeah. I think this is a bit of a weird one, but I think from like the North West Counties First Division, where I started, to where I am now, I've been promoted from every league. So I think it's like 9 promotions in 11, 12 seasons, and not many people can say that. So yeah, although it's not the highest level in English football, it's still, I think, a good achievement. Ooh, I've had so many over the years. Do you know what? Football's weird. Like you can have your best mate in football ever, and then as soon as you change team or he leaves, you sort of speak to him still. But yeah, you get another mate. Do you know what I mean? So at the minute, mine's Toby Malarkey.
Oh yeah, he was rumoured with Chesterfield, wasn't he? Toby Malarkey, a quality centre, and then he goes and scores against them, didn't he?
And got that match. So yeah, but he's a character. Yeah. Him at Fylde, it was probably, I don't know, I had a few like Luke Conlon, Nick Orton, Whitmore, Phyllis Skirk, Stotty, who's at your place. And then back in the day, I had like Tony Thompson, Hanks. Yeah. Before that, Scott Burton, Phoenix. Honestly, I've had so many. Gary Stopford, Gaz Seddon. Yeah. Yeah. Do you know what? The changing rooms I've been in have been top draw. Like, I wouldn't change it for the world. Like my footballing story, because some of the lads I've met and some of the friends I've got, even forgot Steve Houghton, one of my other best mates in football. Yeah, it's just brilliant. Do you know what? He's got his trusty sidekick in Southend next to him, and Sorves is a great coach and Phil's a great man manager, so they work very well together. Some of the stuff Parky's done for me off the pitch, honestly, I can't even begin to repay him. But yeah, he looks after his boys on and off the field, and at the minute we need to look after him and try and get a win. So I'm sure we will do soon. We've got a few lads here who are new to full time, and they're struggling with little knocks and niggles. And I just said, you know what? When I went to Fylde, I was exactly the same. Like, you don't think it's going to affect you that much, but it does. I was just getting weird little strains, and so I found them 2 years quite hard to adjust. But now I feel good. So I just told them boys it'll take a bit of time, but once you get to sort of a year down the line or whatever, it just becomes normal and your body will adapt. So yeah, it took me a while, but I'm there now. Best player I've ever played against. I played against Renato Sanchez for Benfica under 21s at St George's Park. I think for Salford. I think we beat him 1-0. But yeah, he ran the show. He had there were 3 lads in centre mid who were good players in the prime, and he just took the piss. He was only about 18. He just took the piss out of all 3. We was all laughing at him.
He's class, isn't he? He was at Swansea and all.
Well, do you know what? When he comes to the Prem, I thought he's going to tear it up, but he never did. So maybe I'm just miles off it. Do you know what? I go around to my mum's and I'll either have a bacon butty or beans on toast. Like I said, it's not
not the healthiest I've heard on here.
I don't try and dwell on stuff like that. I just do. I do what I do, and I feel like I say it's worked, but then I don't know whether if I did eat a bit better or whatever, I might have been a bit higher. But Yeah, I feel like it's worked. Like I said, the promotions and listen, if I go and have avocado on toast, is it really going to do that much? I don't. Ooh, me and Toby have had HS Tiki Toki on recently. It's awful, but yeah, we've been having that. We think I might need to change it though, because we've not won. I'm more dance and R&B. I'm not into this like. I don't know what genre you call it. Marcus tries putting some bad tunes on. I'm just like, get them off on. The gaffer sat me down actually at the start of the season and asked, and I think as captain it was important for me to sort of integrate this new squad into each other and into the club and how the club works and the values of the club. So I feel like I'm getting there. You know what? It's been disappointing. We was the first game of the season against Maidstone. We was absolutely robbed. Like we had a goal in the 93rd minute, 5 yards onside, ruled out for offside, and a blatant pen on about 85, ruled out. And if that goes in and we win the first game of the season, you know for a fact it changes everything. Whereas now we're still looking for that first win, and it could have come 5 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So we've still not had an explanation for the decision or whatever, but we've got to get on with it. And yeah, my aspirations for us is just to do better than we did last season. We've lost a lot of good players who've gone to like Warrington, Curzon, and we just need to prove that we have improved as a squad and this full-time model works. If you'd have asked me 5 years ago if I'd have captained Altrincham, I'd have been like, there's zero chance of that. But the relationship I have with Phil, and he knows what he's getting from me, I'll fight for a win every game. I nearly had a fight with Chesterfield's manager last week, and that Banks, just for for a win. Yeah, I have changed my attitude, I've changed my mentality, and I feel like it works at the minute. So
you're very well liked, I know, at Altrincham. I've spoke to a lot of Altrincham fans, and when you returned there, they were all extremely happy that you came back to the club.
Yeah, I took a bit of stick for the first few weeks for leaving them, but yeah, we're all right now. And listen, we just need to get that first win, and everything changes. So we'll be trying to look for that on Tuesday. Sounds
great. Looking forward to coming to Altrincham away with Halifax around Christmas time, I believe it is. Oh, great interview, catching up with Jordan Hume. Jordan, if you are watching this, it's much appreciated to give up your time to come on the podcast to talk a bit about your career and some of your interests as well, and certain food that you like. But yeah, Colin, just a bit on the upcoming game week before we do wrap things up. It's quite a tough game week, isn't it, for a lot of clubs?
It really is, yeah. And I think, we have to go back to some of those kind of fairly basic sort of things, really. I've had a look at the games that are on offer, and I think it's something like 5 of the top 7 are at home, 7 of the top 10. So, thinking about those kind of things, because of the game missing and not necessarily knowing whether you can trust form, I wonder whether that's going to be one of the kind of standout features. So I'm not expecting the table to change too much after the next round of fixtures, simply because of the number of home games that either, depending on how you look at it, the top 7 or the top 10 have. But yeah, I mean, like I say, I think we're all just glad to be getting back to discussing some football, aren't we?
Yeah, it's great to, be back and just discussing football. So yeah, it's been great to have this podcast. But yeah, there's quite a lot of crucial fixtures, I think, for a lot of clubs to sort of, keep that momentum going for the top clubs, but also for the clubs that haven't had the best of starts. I think Altrincham versus Scunthorpe's a prime example of that. Scunthorpe are in, devastating position. I think it's the only thing you can really talk about it. They're looking like at this moment in time that they will be getting relegated just based off the form. But Altrincham aside, just speaking to Jordan then, probably by right, well, they are by right in the relegation zone, but by performances and being in the games, they don't deserve to be near the bottom of the table. But the facts speak for themselves. They are near the bottom of the table. So it's a crucial game for both of those clubs. I think Halifax versus Gateshead is like we've already spoken. Halifax, need to get that first win at home. make the Shea a fortress again like it was last season. Side sort of, I think, especially at the back end of the season, they sort of feared coming to Halifax, and we sort of want to have that sort of mentality again of nobody's going to beat us at home, and we're never going to die. Basically saying the never say die attitude, like it proved against Notts County, where it feels like this season just been a bit of a mess. And I think it's time to rectify that against Gateshead at home now, who Gateshead, they're a side that you should be beating at home if you are wanting to even stabilise in this division, but not even if you're wanting to go for the playoffs, in fact. But yeah, Colin, have you got anything to add on the upcoming game week, perhaps maybe Notts County?
Yeah, well, like I say, I'm confident at home. I don't think Aldershot are necessarily the strongest away from home, although they taught us a little bit of a lesson last season away from home. So I think it's got to be treated with caution. But it's just going to be interesting to see whether we can maintain that kind of form and maintain that kind of momentum going forward. Obviously, as a Notts fan, I hope so. But I do think that we might start to see a little bit of kind of stuttering with some of those bigger clubs, maybe early doors. So that's going to be a fascinating one to look, certainly. But I'll echo everything that you've said about some of the teams that you've already mentioned.
Yeah, I look at that, and the only thing that's a bit concerning for you, and I don't want to give it the kiss of death or anything, but Aldershot, the games that they have won have been against, fairly established sides that are wanting to, push for promotion. Teams such as Boreham Wood. They also beat Barnet, who've had a good start to the season. Does that concern you at all?
I gain confidence from the mentality that Notts seem to have in the squad. And of course, we're not going to constantly do these podcasts and find that Notts are unbeaten or whatever. We've got to be beaten at some point. We're not going to go through this season unbeaten at all. But there does seem to be a kind of steely determination in the side that I think was probably lacking last season. Now, that doesn't mean to say that Aldershot can't undo us, at Meadow Lane. That could easily happen. But I also think that whenever that defeat comes, we've got the mentality to get over it and to get going again. And I think, thinking about some of the players who've joined us and what they're trying to achieve, their careers on that upward trajectory, I don't think it'd be too long for us to get back on our feet whenever that goes. But obviously, I'm hoping that Notts get the 3 points against Aldershot.
Yeah, and I think it's a game that I think it's a must-win game if you're wanting to, stabilise at that top of the league. You've got to be beating sides like Aldershot. But like you've mentioned, that defeat is going to come at some point. You don't know when, but it will come. It is about bouncing back after that. So finally, then, we are going to answer your questions. And I've got one topic that I'd like to talk about before we do wrap up the show. Remember, if you are watching this, please remember to drop it a like. It would be much appreciated. But yeah, here are just some of your comments. So the first one that's come in is, what do you think? Who do you think is the best player in the National League? It's quite a difficult one to say. That when I look at the best player, I think you can't really compare a goalkeeper and a striker. You can't compare a defender and a striker. What's your take on that?
No, I'll echo what you're saying. I think it's down to, the way your team plays, and the style of play, and maybe what the team that you support needs. Do you know what I mean? I think you tend to identify, the gap in your side and go, do you know what? I'd really love that player. I remember watching Neil Bishop at early stages of his career. I think he was playing for Barnet, and luckily he did end up playing for Notts. But he was a player that I remember looking at and thinking, "Wow, you're fantastic." I think. Do you know what? I'm going to avoid stereotype. Ruben Rodriguez is obviously a fantastic player, but you know what? If I was picking a player from Notts, and this is probably going to be controversial, I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, but Matty Palmer, I think he's probably more important for Notts in terms of kind of just organising and keeping that momentum and keeping that kind of those performances going. So I think from Notts, if I was to pick the player to represent Notts as one of the better players in the National League, although Ruben deserves an absolute shout, Matty Palmer I think could be mine for Notts. What about you?
You know what? For Notts, and I will talk about the league in total, but for Notts, I would actually agree with you on that. Matty Palmer, since he's come into that side, that defensive midfield, he controls the midfielder at the midfield. He's such a good footballer, actual footballer, good with his feet, but he's also positioning wise, the way he sets up, he's so intelligent as a player. There's nothing really I can add, and that's why I'd probably agree with you on that. Best player in the league. Like I've said, I'm just trying to think now. It's just so hard to sort of say, but I'll do Halifax, in fact, as I am a Halifax fan. I've actually been impressed with the most this season. I'm going to actually give it, because he's played more games than certain players who've coming back from injury and have impressed. I think I've got to give it Sam Minihan. He's been so consistent at wing back. I think underestimated as well by the fans. He's one of those goes under the radar. I don't think he did at Stockport, but I think he did at times at Stockport because of the other players they had to their disposal. But yeah, he's so good up and down the wing, never really gets mugged off. And yeah, I don't think there's a better player so far, and consistent player in the Halifax lineup that's been as good as him this season. Players coming back from injury, though, Angelo Capello seems to have impressed, but I don't think he's done enough for me yet to sort of put him in that sort of category. League-wise, this is the one, it's just so hard to sort of tell. What I'm going to actually do, I'm going to look at Chesterfield as their top of the league and pick a player from there. I don't know if we're doing it based off this season or if we're doing it, based off in total. So if we're doing it based off in total, then I'll probably go to Shamanga just based off what he's done in the past. But this season, I'd probably give it Ollie Banks. I think he's done very well for them so far this season. Our next question then, I believe this is a Solihull Moors fan. What are your score predictions for Torquay versus Solihull Moors? As a Solihull fan, I'd say 2-1 to us. What's your prediction for that?
I'd say it's probably going to be by a bigger margin, to be honest. When I was scribbling down some notes, I think Torquay is susceptible to late goals. I think I counted 6. Solihull, obviously, are lethal. I think they've scored 4 twice, scored 5 once. And I think the 2 4 goals that they've scored, or the 2 scorelines where they've scored 4, have both been away games as well. So I think it could have quite a substantial amount of goals in that one.
Yeah, I'd agree. When I've looked at Torquay, it seemed that I know they defeated Southend away from home, which was a bit of a freak result. I don't think many people were expecting that. They've probably been, and no disrespect to any Torquay fans, the poorest side that I've seen at the Share this season. They were, they did defeat us. Don't get me wrong, and they basically did a job on us. They went 1-0 up through the run of play. We were probably the better side, and then they sat back for the whole of the second half and. I don't know how we never managed to score in that game, but we didn't, and it was one of those games. But yeah, Torquay were a poor side for me. They were at home, though, and something I always look at Torquay at home. When I look at Torquay at the start of the season, you defeat them at home and you get a point away from home, because I think Torquay, they were good, a lot better at home, and it's a long way to go for Solihull Moors. A bit of a surprise here, but I'm probably going to go for a 1-1 draw, just to have a slight feeling on that. The final topic then I do want to talk about, as it is in the title, who would your manager of the month be?
I'm going to be incredibly sort of stereotypical here and give a shout out for Luke Williams, really. And I think there's really solid reasons for that. I think if you look at what's had to happen over the start of this month or whatever, is that you're looking at managers who are trying to bed in their style of play. In every club almost in the National League, you're also trying to bed in a new squad, stamp your authority on it. And I think he's done that job incredibly well. I think he's dealt with also some of the things that I think, your average fan who's not a Notts fan who's watching this probably isn't aware of. He's had to do a lot of hard work off the field as well. There's been a few little kind of frustrating comments on social media, and there's been a bit of a kind of blow up about that, about, comments being made directly to players, and how the players have responded to it. And I think Luke Williams has managed that off-field stuff incredibly well as well. And I know, like I say, we look at the performances, and performances on the pitch have been really strong. But off the pitch as well, I think he's won an awful lot of the fan base over with the maturity that he's demonstrated, with the focus that he's got, and the understanding of the fan base as well, which has been fantastic.
Yeah, I think because I can't pick my manager, so I can't give you any in-depth details on how Chris Millington's done, because we haven't had the best start and he'd never be a contender for that. I'm going to go to Chesterfield, and it's purely because they're top of the league, but not just that, they've had the toughest start out of any of the title favourites this season. They had Dorking Wanderers away first game of the season. It's a tough place to go because of the time in Dorking on a high after promotion. Managed to get a point there. Yes, it was probably disappointing at the end of the day, but then they've beaten like Aldershot. But then after that, Wrexham at home, it's always a tough place to go. Wrexham had high hopes going into that game. You've won 2-0 there. You could have easily lost a game like that, and no one would be surprised. Wrexham are probably the favourites going into that. Chesterfield fans even agreed. But then going somewhere like Notts County away from home, although they were 2-0 up and they conceded 2 goals in the second half, it's still a tough place to go. Notts County, the way they've started, and they've managed to get a point out of that game. And then after that, Barnet at home, they're on a high. Barnet had a good start to the season, got the job done there. Altrincham away, go 1-0 down. They had the character to come back and get the 3 points. Oldham away, managed to get the 3 points there. For me, I think you have to give it Paul Cook just based off the teams that they've played, the timing of when they've played those teams, and their current position in the league, where Luke Williams, although they're unbeaten, there has been certain games, for example, Gateshead away from home, potentially Bournemouth Wood away, which is a tough place to go. Everyone knows that, where they've dropped points and shouldn't necessarily of drop points. So that's why I think I'm actually going to give it Paul Cook. Some may even say Phil Parkinson, but I just think there's so much inconsistency at the start of the season with Yeovil away losing to Chesterfield and their current position in the league with the sort of start that they've had. I'm actually definitely going to give it Paul Cook, the manager. I don't think Phil Parkinson is in the equation. There's other managers as well. Barnett's manager, Dean Brennan, Wheelstone's manager, Stuart Maynard. But yeah, I'm going to have to give it Paul Cook. Although he's had the resources to bring in his own players, they probably had the toughest start in this league, and they're still top of the league. So that's why I'm going to give it Paul Cook. That more or less wraps up the whole podcast for this week. I say this week, there will be another one coming out on Thursday. Colin, it's been a pleasure to bring you on again.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been great to speak to you as well about all the latest news with the National League. It's been great to actually do a bonus episode, like we were talking about mental health with Dean earlier. Obviously, this sort of helps out for a lot of people. I hope a lot of people who obviously not really had much to do this weekend. I'm sure other people, I know Tom did a Twitter space yesterday, so I know that would have benefited fans as well. We're hoping with these sort of things, this will also help you out if you're struggling with mental health. And yeah, that's the purpose of this podcast as well. Not just for that, but also for something to do from my perspective, as I was getting a bit bored this weekend. But yeah, good luck to all your teams on Tuesday night. Big game for a lot of your sides. Please remember to drop the podcast a like and subscribe if you haven't already. You know the goal. We're trying to get to 1,000 by the end of the season. Once again, Colin, it's been great to have you on. And yeah, I'll see you all next time. Cheers for now.